Good morning, everyone. It's Jake from Walkie Farm here. Put the cattle into a paddock. I've got them in a 3-day paddock at the moment because I've got a big couple days of doing yard work on different properties. And this heifer is bagging up. She's ready to drop a calf imminently. And we also just moved the pigs, which are up there near the house. But I just wanted to jump on quickly and talk a bit about fresh and frozen produce. So when we started our direct-to-market farm business, we made the decision to, the day we cut the steaks or the chops or whatever it was, cryovac pack it and hard freeze it immediately. So we send our cuts down to -17. Little tip for all the other farmers out there that are storing in freighters, 20-foot shipping containers. We used to run at -20 and they go harder than that. But the coolant that comes stock in them isn't designed to run colder than -17, and you run into some issues, which we found out. So -17 is the sweet spot. And if we're splitting hairs over -17 or -20, I don't think it matters too much. But in the early days, we received a lot of queries and concerns from customers about receiving frozen meat. Didn't know how to handle it. How do we defrost it? And that stuff, those questions are gone now. We don't get any of those concerns anymore. Whether it's existing customers because they've been trained and educated as to how we service them, but new customers don't seem to query it anymore either. I don't know if that's a shift in the market or we just communicate that better. Doesn't seem to be a concern anymore. But one concern that we do get from customers, and one question that is frequent, is what do I do when the meat defrosts? Do I have to cook it straight away? Can I refreeze it? Sometimes when we ship an order to somebody in our refrigerated supply chain that we use, it might sit out the front door of their house for a few hours before they get home. And when they get home, they'll open the box and maybe a few of the packages on the top have started becoming a little bit soft on the edges, but the stuff in the middle is still frozen. The center of that cut that's gone a little bit soft is still hard frozen, and the whole box is very cold, and people reach out to us a bit concerned. What do we do? I normally just email them a bit of a brief explanation, but also a link to the New South Wales Food Authority's website that says meat that's been frozen and then thawed is absolutely fine to refreeze as long as when it's thawed it stayed cold, which if the center of a cut's still frozen and the edges are defrosting, obviously it's still cold. And what the Food Authority means by still cold is under 4 degrees refrigeration temperature. And some people accept that. A lot of people that do home cooking or processed meat in bulk are very familiar with this and it doesn't concern them. Other people have real hang-ups about having meat that's been frozen and thawed and then frozen again. And we don't judge that, but you know, the data's out, it's fine. What you don't want to do is bring your cut of meat up to room temp, 20 degrees, and let it sit at that for a day or two and then refreeze it and then defrost it again at a later date. Then you started to get into a little bit more uncharted territory. But if it's still cold, fine to refreeze. Something interesting for people that are listening to this and thinking, I'm still not convinced, and I'd like my meat fresh. Here's a couple little stats for you. Did you know that 50% of the pork that's consumed in Australia is imported? A lot of this comes from South America, so Brazil and other countries in South America. How do you think that pork comes over? It comes over frozen, and you can look this up on index.com, which is an international market tracking website that collates all this data. It comes over frozen. So the pigs are grown in Brazil and other countries. They're processed there. They're boxed into primals. They're frozen. They're shipped on boats to Australia, and then they're defrosted and put it on the shelf for market. How many of you have been to the supermarket or the local butcher and purchased pork that's not country of origin Australia and it's been fresh? All of you. This meat isn't really being offered frozen. There might be the odd cut is, but generally it's being offered fresh. If you saw a big special on pork cuts at the local supermarket, the Colesworth, the Aldi, whatever it is, and it was fresh, and they were selling pork bone out roasts for $8 a kilo, fresh, not frozen on the shelf, would it worry you to buy a heap of that and put it in the boot of your car and take it home and freeze it because you got a good deal? Most people that are concerned about refreezing meat that's already been frozen wouldn't be concerned about that. But that meat has already been frozen. You just don't know because you haven't investigated the supply chain enough. And so when people get a little bit concerned about a bit of meat going a little bit soft and refreezing it, if you're purchasing meat from the local supermarket, there's a big chance that stuff's already been frozen for a period of time along the supply chain as already. Here's another one, fresh prawns. The boats that go out to sea to catch our prawns don't go out and come back same day necessarily and sell those prawns fresh into a supply chain, and then it's at the local butcher or the seafood monger the next day. A lot of the time those boats are out at ocean for days, if not weeks, getting their catch into their hulls and bringing it in. And the way they keep that prawn fresh being the word not going off, is they throw it in the hull and snap freeze it and hard freeze it instantly. And then they come to shore, and then it gets defrosted and pushed through the supply chain. And so your fresh prawns that you're buying, whether they're at the fishmonger, cooked or raw, the fresh prawns have been frozen for days, if not weeks. And so the food intelligence around how do we handle meat, well, at our home here, we're pretty lax with it. We don't give the kids food poisoning. Mrs. Wolke doesn't get me laid up in bed because I've been eating meat that's been defrosted for a while. But we'll defrost meat on the kitchen bench. We'll defrost it in a sink of warm water, trigger alert, that likes to trigger people. We'll defrost it on a tray in a fridge. And if Mrs. Wolke defrosts something and it becomes defrosted but it's still cold and plans change, we'll refreeze it. Doesn't bother us. We'll bring it out later. We've got that flexibility with this marvelous technology called refrigeration. So I thought you might be interested, if you're opposed to purchasing meat that's frozen, a lot of the fresh meat that you've bought is already frozen. So if you're opposed to frozen meat, you're probably opposed to frozen defrosted meat that's going to have to be refrozen, which is a lot of the stuff that you're getting at the supermarket. Have a great day.